Expat billionaires and poor Icelanders alike were forced to take cover as Irma tore roofs off buildings, flipped cars, and killed livestock, raging from the Leeward Islands across Puerto Rico and Hispaniola, then into Cuba before turning on Florida. Seafront hotels were evacuated in Havana and relief workers spent the night rescuing people from homes in the city center as the sea penetrated to historic depths in the flood-prone area. U.S. President Donald Trump issued a disaster declaration on Sunday for Puerto Rico, where Irma killed at least 3 people and left hundreds of thousands without electricity. Trump also expanded federal funds available to the U.S. Virgin Islands, which suffered extensive damage to homes and infrastructure. Further east in the Caribbean, battered islands such as St. Martin and Barbuda were taking stock of the damage as people began emerging from shelters to scenes of devastation. Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte said the death toll on the Dutch part of St. Martin had doubled to 4, and that 70% of homes had been damaged or destroyed. Following reports of looting, the Netherlands said it would increase its military presence on the island to 550 soldiers by Monday. Rutte said that to ensure order, security forces were authorized to act with a firm hand. Alex Martinez, 31, a native of Florida who was vacationing on the Dutch side of St. Martin when Irma hit the island in the early hours of Wednesday, vividly described how his hotel was gutted by the storm, turning it into a debris-strewn tip. Doors were torn from hinges, windows shattered, cars lifted off the ground and furniture blown through the rooms after Irma hit the building with a burst of pressure that was like you were getting sucked out of an aeroplane, he said. Martinez, his wife, and 2 others barricaded themselves in their bathroom, pushing with all their might to secure the door as Irma battered it with winds of up to 185 mph, 300 km per hour. That's when we thought, that was it, he said. I honestly, swear to God, thought we were going to die at that point in time. Everything continued for maybe 20, 30 minutes, my wife's there, she's praying, and things just kinda calmed down. I guess that's when the eye of the storm came. Staff deserted the hotel to look after their families and Martinez and a few others had to scavenge for food and water for 3 days until they were airlifted out on Saturday, he said. Dutch authorities are evacuating other tourists and injured people to Curaçao, where Dutch King Willem-Alexander and Interior Minister Ronald Plasterk were expected to arrive today. Malicious Actions France, which oversees neighboring St. Barthélemy and the other half of St. Martin, said the police presence on the 2 islands had been boosted to close to 500. The French Interior Ministry said 11 people suspected of malicious actions had been arrested since Friday as television footage showed scenes of chaos on the islands, with streets underwater, boats and cars tossed into piles and torn rooftops. Irma killed at least 10 people on the 2 islands, the French government said. France's Caisse Centrale de Reassurance, a state-owned reinsurance group, estimated the cost of Irma at some €1.2 billion. French President Emmanuel Macron was due to visit St. Martin on Tuesday. Barbuda, home to some 1,800 inhabitants, faces a reconstruction bill that could total hundreds of millions of dollars, state officials say, after Irma steamrolled the island. The Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Gaston Brown, said Irma had wreaked absolute devastation on Barbuda, which he described as barely habitable after 90% of cars and buildings had been damaged. The government ordered a total evacuation when a second hurricane, Jose, emerged, but a handful of people refused to leave their homes, including a gentleman, who said he was living in a cave, said Garfield Burford, director of news at government-owned broadcaster ABS TV and radio in Antigua and Barbuda. Irma also plunged the British Virgin Islands, an offshore business and legal center, into turmoil. We weren't late, Defense Secretary Michael Fallon told BBC television on Sunday, saying Britain had pre-positioned an aid ship for the Caribbean hurricane season and that his government's response has been as good as anybody else's. British billionaire entrepreneur Richard Branson, who sought refuge in the wine cellar of his home on Necker Island, called Irma the storm of the century on Twitter and urged people to make donations to help rebuild the region.